Was Mehmet the Conqueror a Christian? Very interesting question. I know a lot of people are probably confused by that proposition. Let me tell you, for those who don't know, who Mehmed the Conqueror was. He was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, starting in 1451 until his death in 1481. And he's known for ending the Byzantine Empire and conquering the city of Constantinople, which the Turks had tried to siege several times. And he was the first one to be successful. Lots of people had tried, including his father. They had all failed, but he finished that. Now, that was only the beginning of his conquering, though. He went to conquer a lot of the Balkan regions. He conquered rebellious Turkish leaders in Anatolia and consolidated his holdings in Anatolia. He went to invade parts of the Balkans, Trebizond, Albania. Trebizond's in northern Anatolia, actually. He went to conquer Albania, and he even conquered a small part of Italy. But then he died, and then the Italians took that back. The Albanians actually slowed him down quite a bit. He spent like 20 years trying to take Albania. Anyway, was he a Christian, though? I'm going to look at two historians, one from the late 15th century, one from the early 16th century, both Byzantine historians. And I'm going to give you some information you probably didn't know about, and I'm going to draw some conclusions, but I'm ultimately just putting it out there so you can make up your own mind. Was Mehmed the Conqueror a Christian? Seems absurd, right? He was a sultan of an Islamic empire, so he's almost certainly going to be a Muslim, right? Well, there might be more to it than you think. Let's see. Critobulus is our first source. Critobulus was a Greek who lived on the island of Imbros. At the time of Constantinople fell, there were a couple islands that still belonged to the Byzantine Empire. They surrendered to the Ottomans. And this man, I believe he was from Imbros, goes and offers his services to Mehmed the Conqueror. He could write, so he became kind of like a court historian. Now, he dies in 1470. So that means that he couldn't record all of Mehmed the Conqueror's life, but he recorded up to 1467. And after Constantinople, it talks about how he's fixing up the city. And I'm going to read an excerpt, page 94. The book's called History of Mehmed the Conqueror, pages 94 and 95. During that period, he called back Gennadius, a very wise and remarkable man. He had already heard much through common report about the wisdom and prudence and virtue of this man. Therefore, immediately after the capture, he sought for him, being anxious to see him and to hear some of his wisdom. And after a painstaking search, he found him at Adrianople in a village kept under guard in the home of one of the notables, but enjoying great honors. For his captor knew of his virtue, even though he himself was a military man. When the Sultan saw him and had a short time, and in a short time had proofs of his wisdom and prudence and virtue, and also of his power as a speaker and of his religious character, he was greatly impressed with him and held him in great honor and respect, and gave him the right to come to him at any time, and honored him with liberty in conversation. He enjoyed his various talks with him and his replies, and he loaded him with noble and costly gifts. In the end, he made him patriarch and high priest of the Christians, and gave him, among many other rights and privileges, the rule of the church and all its power and authority, no less than enjoyed previously under the emperors. He also granted him the privilege of delivering before him fearlessly and freely many good disquisitions concerning Christian faith and doctrine. And he himself went to his residence, taking with him the dignitaries and wise men of his court, and thus paid him a great honor, and in many other ways he delighted the man. Thus, the Sultan showed that he knew how to respect the true worth of any man, not only of military men, but of every class, kings and tyrants and emperors. Furthermore, the Sultan gave back the church to the Christians, but the will of God to by the will of God, together with a large portion of its properties. So, what do we see here? We see that Mehmed the Conqueror is just very impressed by Gennadius Scholarius, and they had a lot of good discussions. And yeah, he's very impressed by him. And it sounds like they had good theological conversations. But that doesn't mean he's a Christian, right? Just because you respect a Christian and are close with them and you have good discussions, does that mean you're a Christian? No, it does not. But I have one more source, and there's some interesting stuff in this source. Remember that this guy, Critavolas, dies in 1470, so he doesn't really get into the last 10 years of Mehmed the Conqueror's life. But this man, Theodore Spandounes, his parents were from the Byzantine Empire, and just before its fall, they fled west because probably knew it was going to fall. And then after the fall, they gave birth to Theodore Spandounes. So he was like a Byzantine born in exile after the empire was over. And his book's called On the Origin of the Ottoman Emperors. And he's going to say some stuff about Sultan Mehmet the Conqueror. This Mehmet was gifted with a singular and wide-ranging intellectual ability. He understood Arabic and Greek and had as his master a Greek monk, Scholario, Gennadius Scholarius, who was a most erudite theologian and had attended the Council of Florence. Scholarios composed a work in Greek entitled To Mehmed the Emperor, a most beautiful work defining the nature of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Just pause for a second there. So it's a book talking about the doctrine of the Trinity. The Muslims are quite offended by this doctrine. The Surah 5 of the Quran tries to attack this doctrine, and a couple other places in the Quran, and they believe that it goes against their doctrine of Tawheed, which is the Islamic version of monotheism. Now, basically what we know from this and the previous book is that theological conversations were going on with Mehmet and Scholarios. And they get into detail here. He's written for him a book on the doctrine of the Trinity, explaining it in detail, because a lot of Christians argue that the Quran misrepresents the Trinity, and most Muslims are going to learn about the Trinity from the Quran. And so he wrote this book to Mehmet to help him out. All right. Okay, so Scholarios composed a work in Greek entitled To Mehmed the Emperor, a most beautiful work defining the nature of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It is easy to convince a Christian of the truth of such matters, but to make them intelligible to a Turk is another matter. This book comprises all the articles of the Christian faith and is a fine work to be read and studied by all. He often read out of it to Mehmed, so much so that some say that the emperor adhered more to the Christian faith than to any other, especially in the years before his death. Very interesting. He always kept by him some relics of saints with lamps burning before them, either, as some say, to enhance their reputation so as he could sell them to Christians at a great price, or, as others say, out of a genuine devotion to them. What can we conclude from this? What are we saying? It's some people say he adhered more to the Christian faith than any others by in the final years before his death. So keep in mind, this guy dies in 1470, so he didn't know about the final years of his life. He just knows he's having these discussions with Scholarios. Um, so he kept relics. Now, it's odd for a Muslim to keep Christian relics. There are Islamic apologists and scholars who might have Christian books in their library about the Bible, about certain Christian doctrines, but relics are purely an object of veneration. Now, it says he could have kept them to enhance their reputation so he could sell them to Christians at a great price. Now, think about it. Why does the emperor need extra cash, though? He could just raise taxes. He could just raise the jizya on the Christians if he wants more of their cash, or conquer more lands and take their money. There's plenty of other ways for an emperor to get cash than sell relics to Christians. So uh, of so it seems like genuine devotion to them is what the true reason. And it says kept the relics of the saints with lamps burning before them, like he lit candles in front of them. He always I'll reread the last part. He always kept by him some relics of saints with lamps burning before them, either, as some say, to enhance their reputations so that he could sell them to Christians at a great price, or, as others say, out of a genuine devotion to them. All right. So it seems like he's doing some relic veneration. Um, what does this say? Well, was he a Muslim or a Christian? Well, I've shown you the evidence. You can make up your own mind, but my conclusion is um, that he was probably a Muslim. I don't think he ever denied Muhammad was a prophet, but I think he saw Christianity as a valid path to God and dabbled in some syncretism. Keep in mind, he's not a theologian, he's a politician. He's and politicians are known to. Now, it's certainly not Orthodox Islam what he believed, but again, he's not a theologian, he's a politician. And so I think there's good evidence to believe he had syncretistic beliefs. Now, say hypothetically he was a full-blown believer in Christianity and secretly denied Muhammad. I don't know a lot about his son Bayazid, but he succeeded him. And some people say, now I've not studied this, I've only read a bit about it, that his son poisoned him to take the throne. So if he found, say hypothetically, he could have found out he was an apostate from Islam and he poisoned him. But an apostate from Islam is, you'd go before a Sharia court, right? And keep in mind, it's an empire. There's always a Game of Thrones going on. The idea of a son poisoning their father happened in Western Europe, happened in the Byzantine Empire, happened all over the world. That's nothing new. So yeah, so just think about those two sources. I don't know what to make. I guess he was kind of a Muslim with a bit of Christian syncretism. That's what I think he was. But I've shown you the sources. I've read from them. I'll let you make up your own mind. Whatever you think, put it down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you have to say. God bless.